Bona tarda, benvingudes i benvinguts a la Biblioteca Jaume Fuster. Com ja sabeu, tenim l'honor, el plaer de tenir aquí el Premi Nobel de Literatura Abdulrazak Gurnah, que conversarà sobre el seu últim llibre, un largo camino, publicat per Salamandra, a qui donem, com sempre, les gràcies, Clàudia, Anic, grans col·laboradors de Biblioteques de Barcelona, i conversarà amb Esther Pujolràs, especialista en l'obra de Gurnah. Com sempre, hi ha venda de llibres al vestíbul. La conversa durarà entre 3 quarts d'hora i 50 minuts. Quan acabi, sisplau, és el vostre moment per parlar amb Abdulrazak Gurnah, fer-li preguntes, i tot seguit, per aquesta banda de l'escenari, sisplau, si feu una cua, us signarà el llibre. Gràcies per tot. Thank you, Mr. Gurnah. Thank you.
Doncs jo voldria donar les gràcies a tothom per acompanyar-nos en aquest moment, que és una ocasió molt especial perquè el món editorial va de la mà del món acadèmic, perquè el llançament de la nova novel·la d'Abdulrazak Gurnah coincideix amb la investidura honoris causa d'Abdulrazak Gurnah per part de la Universitat de Lleida aquest proper divendres. Està molt bé que el món editorial i el món acadèmic estiguin junts i vagin de la mà. Si em permeteu, doncs jo faré una petita presentació sobre la nova novel·la d'Abdulrazak i una mica intentaré ubicar aquesta nova novel·la. Abdulrazak, if you want to... Yeah.
I trust you.
No, you better. Let's see if you agree with what I say. Okay, right. Doncs continueu una petita presentació sobre aquesta novel·la en concret, però intentarem ubicar-la en el que és la seva obra. Theft, robatori, traduïda al castellà com Un largo camino, és la novel·la post-Premi Nobel d'Abdulrazak Gurnah. Per aquesta raó, és d'esperar que la publicació d'aquesta novel·la es vegi envoltada d'expectació. Què ens pot oferir de nou un guanyador del premi literari més prestigiós del món? Haig de confessar que com a acadèmica que estudia l'obra d'Abdulrazak Gurnah veig en cada nova novel·la l'oportunitat d'aprofundir una miqueta més en el món encisador de l'oceà Índic que nodreix la seva obra i participar en la producció de coneixement que es desprèn d'unes narratives fermament ancorades en l'empatia i la compassió. Més darrere la meva condició d'acadèmica especialitzada en literatures postcolonials s'hi amaga una lectora que no s'avergonyeix de proclamar el seu amor incondicional per la literatura. És aquesta lectora empedraïda la que esperàvem delectant-se la publicació de Theft, un largo camino, no perquè es tractés de la novel·la post-Premi Nobel, sinó simplement perquè sabia que la vida em donava una vegada més l'oportunitat d'endinsar-me en els plaers d'una història excel·lent. Un largo camino comença amb el casament fatídic de Raya, una noia de 17 anys, extremadament bonica, a qui el seu pare, en un intent de salvar-la de la ignomínia, l'esposa amb un home molt més gran que la tracta com un objecte de plaer, totalment impassible a les necessitats emocionals de la noia. Raya no es rendeix al destí perpetrat pel seu pare i aconsegueix divorciar-se del seu marit i amb el temps es torna a casar i és feliç al costat del seu nou marit, Haji. La narració, però, ben aviat ens condueix a altres indrets i ens adonem que la història de Raya és el rerefons que permet que la història dels veritables protagonistes d'Un largo camino, el seu fill, Karim, el seu servent, Badar, i la que es convertirà en la seva jove, Fausia, floreixi. Com és habitual en l'obra de Gurnah, Zanzíbar, l'arxipèlag format per les illes d'Unguja i Pemba, és el lloc on la història es desenvolupa. Però si bé en novel·les anteriors els personatges emigren al Regne Unit, a un largo camino, ningú no es mou de Tanzània. On hauríem d'ubicar un largo camino dins l'obra d'Abdulrazak Gurnah? Imbuït per l'esperit indoceànic de les mil i una nits, les narracions de Gurnah es defineixen per un patró d'interrupcions i continuacions. Aquestes interrupcions i continuacions poden aparèixer de manera explícita en la mateixa novel·la, com és el cas de Desertion, traduïda al castellà com El desertor, i en vies en procés de ser traduïda al català. On el romanç prohibit entre una dona africana, Rihanna, i un musungu, un home blanc, un anglès, Martin Pierce, és interromput per deixar pas a la història de Rashid, qui en el seu paper de narrador continuarà la tasca de relatar les conseqüències d'aquest afer amorós que transcorre durant l'època colonial, a principis del segle XX. Ara bé, les narracions interrompudes d'una novel·la específica poden perfectament reprendre's en una altra novel·la. Aquest és el cas de Yusuf, el protagonista de Paradise, traduïda tant al català com al castellà, la història del qual continua en la figura de Hamza, el protagonista d'Afterlife, la vida després, també traduïda. Un altre exemple és el d'Abbas, el pare del protagonista de Admiring Silence, traduïda al castellà com a Precario Silencio, qui desapareix de la narració per emergir de nou en The Last Gift, l'última ofrena, que no està encara traduïda. Defenso la teoria que tant Karim com Badar d'un largo camino com a manifestacions d'abandonament, Raya deixa Karim a Zanzíbar quan es casa amb Haji i va viure es-Salam, i Badar és literalment abandonat pel seu pare davant la mort de la seva mare, continuen, en el sentit de perfilar subtileses, les històries de desercions de tots aquells personatges que habiten l'univers de Gurnah. Hi ha molt de Yusuf, de Paradís, el nen de 12 anys que el seu pare deixa com a penyor a un mercader per pagar els deutes en Badar. Però mentre la història de creixement de Yusuf transcorre a l'època colonial, Badar, junt amb Karim i Fawzia, gaudeixen i pateixen alhora d'una Tanzània postcolonial, teòricament independent del poder britànic. I parlant d'abandonament, m'agradaria dedicar unes paraules a Hassan, el protagonista de la primera novel·la d'Abdulrazak Gurnah, Memory of Departure, Record de la partença, que no ha estat traduïda, publicada l'any 1987. Hassan, un noi jove que viu a algun indret no especificat de la costa de l'Àfrica oriental, la zona coneguda com a costa Swahili, lluita per obrir-se camí en un món dominat per un patriarcat ferotge, que li impedeix créixer amb llibertat. Engolit per la pobresa i els abusos constants d'un pare que, lluny de protegir-lo, l'endinsa encara més en la desesperança, Hassan decideix buscar sort a Nairobi, a casa del seu oncle matern, un home ric, que en teoria, i com a agraïment a la seva germana, la mare de Hassan promet ajudar-lo. Les coses es torcen i Hassan es veu obligat a abandonar Nairobi en un vaixell que el portarà a descobrir les terres vorejades per l'oceà Índic. Crec que aquesta primera novel·la, una memòria de partença, com el títol suggereix, recull l'essència temàtica que embolcalla l'obra de Gurnah, l'oceà Índic, l'abandonament i el món islàmic com a codi cultural. Gurnah aconsegueix fixar l'oceà Índic en l'imaginari col·lectiu. La memòria de partença de Hassan continua amb Daoud, The Pilgrim's Way, El camí del pelegrí, que no ha estat traduïda. Un jove originari de Zanzíbar que es veu obligat a emigrar al Regne Unit davant l'esclat de la revolució de Zanzíbar, només 11 anys després de la independència. Daud adoba el camí de possiblement dos dels més icònics exiliats de Gurnah, Saleh Omar i Latif Mahmoud, de By the Sea, a la vora del mar, una novel·la traduïda tant al català com al castellà. Tornem ara a la novel·la que ha propiciat aquesta trobada a la Biblioteca Jaume Fuster. I permeteu-me recordar el títol original en anglès, Theft, robatori. El robatori del títol evoca una pluralitat de pillatges, alguns dels quals no puc desvelar atès que estan íntimament lligats a l'argument. El que sí que puc afirmar sense por de delatar què passa amb Badar, Karim i Fausia, els tres joves protagonistes de la novel·la, és que les seves vides a Zanzíbar es veuran rodejades per un nou colonialisme, aparentment inofensiu, que de mica en mica els atraparà i modelarà les seves existències. Em refereixo al turisme. El colonialisme no ha finit. El colonialisme, cosí germà del patriarcat, és perillosament maleable. L'embat turístic, el nou colonialisme que assetja la costa Swahili, provoca una reacció en els habitants de la zona que evoca l'època colonial. Què volen aquesta gent de nosaltres? Per què venen? Us puc ben assegurar que Abdulrazak Gurnah, com és d'esperar, no defrauda amb Theft, amb un largo camino. Amb la destresa narrativa que el caracteritza, ens convida a mirar el món contemporani amb l'ull crític del pensador inesgotable i l'efecte impenitent de la bonhomia, mentre ens adverteix que els lladres tenen una capacitat inigualable d'adaptació. Now we can continue in English.
Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. Now, I have prepared just some questions, just a kind of script, not to get lost. But I like us to be this just more than an interview, a conversation. But we have to start somewhere. And I thought that we could start with the very beginning of Theft, that is to say, the opening quote, which I found... Sorry. What was this? Okay. So the opening quote for Theft is from Joseph Conrad's Chance. And I think that this quote is actually, I read Chance a long time ago, so I don't remember the novel very much. But I think that this particular sentence is actually uttered by Marlowe, because Marlowe is one of the characters of Chance, Marlowe from Heart of Darkness. And the quote reads, in a general way, it's very difficult for one to become remarkable. And I was wondering, were you trying to make any kind of statement with this opening quote in relationship with the fact that this is your post-Nobel Prize novel? Or was this quote more in relationship with the characters, or both things at the same time, or maybe not?
How many questions were there? The thing with also with writing with a novel, for me anyway, is that they don't always appear in the way they appear in the finished product.
That's true.
In fact, I'd finished writing the novel, and it had already gone off on its journeys to, agents and editors and whatever. And as I do on a regular basis, sort of thought something must have prompted it, of course, but it's time I reread Chance. So I started to read it, and I thought, that's how I'm thinking of the figure of Badr, say. Or indeed, how I'm thinking of how Karim might have done better. Mm-hmm. And also because it's such a witty way of saying something very simple, that if you desire so much to be remarkable, it's very likely that you will not become remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
So I put it there. So it really came at the very end.
Oh, I see.
When more or less the book was on its way, as it were.
Oh.
You know, the usual things that happen to a book. Copy editors start saying, why have you got a comma there? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But so that comes very late. As a way of, and often epigraphs are like that, I think, you know. It's very unusual for me anyway, for the epigraph to be the starting point. But that after, you know, the writing and the, or rather after the thinking and the making notes and working it out and back and forth, and the thing is done, and then you come across something and think, that would be a good way of kind of like flagging something about it. I don't usually do epigraphs. But I think, for example, I use in Admiring Silence.
In Admiring Silence, that's true.
And
in Gravel Heart.
And Gravel Heart, that was a long-running thing. I had that in mind. But with Admiring Silence, that idea, well, it comes from Robert Louis Stevenson, the last years of his life, because he was suffering so much from tuberculosis, or in any case from various lung problems. He was told that going to live in the South Pacific might possibly. They didn't think in those days that, you know, you could cure diseases with medicines. They thought you could cure it by moving your body somewhere else, you know, and somehow there your body will recover. So he spent the last years of his life in Samoa, but in the process, because he was a working writer, in the process he would write these dispatches to newspapers, mostly in the United States, and these were, if things worked out, then he would collect these and publish them in a book. And this book was called In the South Seas. Mm-hmm. And one of the islands he visited, the very tiny islands in the South Pacific, a Melanesian island, he called it Ipamama. I don't know if that's the right thing. You know, when these guys were traveling around, they sometimes just renamed places because they didn't really know or couldn't hear the name properly or something like that. Anyway, the king of Ipamama. And he has this description of, it's a tiny island, and the king or the chief or the headman or whatever it might even be just the biggest uncle or something. But anyway, he has a rifle and he has a house on the beach. And most of the people live more or less, as it were, having access to the beach. And if he didn't like something that's going on out there, he would pick up his rifle and he would fire it in the direction of whatever it is that he didn't like. And what he didn't like was when people were silent. He liked to see people singing, dancing. He didn't like to see them sitting around whispering or talking to each other. He did not like silence. And so he has this description of the king of Ipamama bends his great ear on this silence. And I just thought it was very beautiful.
And the title is very beautiful, Admiring Silence.
So, Admiring Silence, because to me it seemed to be very much how, in a small scale, very much how authoritarian authority, if you like, likes. He doesn't like silence or whispers. He wants to see people jumping about and behaving stupidly, because then he knows what they're doing. But if they're whispering, God knows what they're saying.
And of course, silence means also thinking. So they don't like,
or something, dangerous.
Yeah.
Something suppressed, something secret.
Now, thinking about theft and the newness of theft, to me, is that it is set in the 90s and that the main protagonists have not lived or experienced colonialism and the Zanzibari revolution at first hand. So how do you account for this generational change in perspective in your work?
Well, if you look at what I've done, I've moved from, the 1890s with desertion to whatever, Gravel Hearts and whatever. You know, it's not, the dates don't bother me, you know, about what it is, or rather what period it is. What interested me in writing this book was to I think it was to say something about tourism. Sure, there was in the background. But it wasn't like in the major thing. I didn't want to do a critique of tourism or something like that. And I still really don't think I do. My concerns are different. But I also wanted to write about how things have changed over a period of, say, 30 or 40 years, without necessarily marking it kind of with sort of milestones of the revolution, the independence, and so on and so forth. Not to do it like that, because just too many things happen, too many complications, too much detail will be required. It will be one of those 600-page novels that American writers love, which is fine. I'm not saying anything about that. But it's not how I work. I don't work with those sort of kind of dynastics, sort of whatever. But I wanted a sense of that period, that change, that what happens before, what happens during, if you like, in a way, the independence, and also where are we now. I wanted something like that. So we do see the generations, but we see them in the stories that explain the now. We see them in the way that we understand the consequences of what those people did or didn't do. So when you say abandoned by the parent who leaves, well, we don't know that till very, very late in the novel, that in fact Badr's father, because Badr doesn't know.
No.
So we don't know those things. Those things come out in the way in which the contemporary, the now, is understood. So I guess in a way I'm also interested in consequences. I'm also interested in the way that things people casually do, all of us, sometimes have consequences we don't anticipate, and we can't control, can't do anything about it, and somebody else has to pay for it. Not malicious, perhaps, but you know, everybody lives their lives and struggles and fails and whatever. And then you leave stuff behind, and somebody else has to deal with that. So I wanted that anyway. That's the reason. It wasn't necessary to say, let me write about the 21st century or something like that. It was more both to, I had a picture of a hotel staring at me in my study. A hotel like the Tamarind Hotel.
The Tamarind Hotel, yeah.
A little bit like that. But there's so many hotels like that in Zanzibar now. Many of them houses which were taken away from other people. They call them boutique hotels or something like this. But really, the houses belonging to other people, which the government took over and then just dispossessed people. So there's another theft. And then sell them cheaply amongst themselves, and then somebody invests and so. So I wanted to write about that sort of place. I've stayed in places like that. So I wanted to write about that. That was one of the things I wanted. It wasn't really tourism. It was really wanting to say, what has it done? Now, please, if any of you, I'm sure several of you have already been to Zanzibar. If you haven't, you will. Probably sooner or later. Everybody goes to Zanzibar these days. So it's not to say, I'm a tourist too. But there's tourism and there's tourism, and we've got to understand what we do.
And there are Muzungus and Muzungus.
Absolutely. And we've got, I mean, I don't know how many millions of tourists come to Spain. But Spain can absorb it because Spain has had both a tradition of doing it, it's a big country, so Zanzibar is a tiny little island. The impact of tourism is enormous.
So you don't see tourism now in Zanzibar as a manifestation or a new form of colonialism, or that could take this new form of colonialism?
It's complicated. It's complicated.
Yeah.
Tourism, particularly, not just places like that, but many other places, the Caribbean, probably the Pacific Islands that I'm talking about. It's complicated. In the first instance, it brings work. In the case of Zanzibar, let me not generalize, let me just say in the case of Zanzibar, one of the results of tourism, which only really seriously took off in the mid-1980s and then into the 90s, there was no tourism before that. At all. What it led to almost immediately was the pavements got fixed. You didn't want tourists slipping and falling and cracking their ankles and so on. They wouldn't come back. Pavements got fixed. The water ran. Electricity is available. The thugs were not in evidence because you didn't want thugs in the streets. I mean the state thugs. Because the tourists weren't. So what it led, slowly but ultimately, was a general improvement in the environment in which people lived. So that's the plus side. The other side of it, at least at first, it's more under control now, was the introduction of wholly new ways of doing things. Drugs, young women being somehow seduced into doing things which they know, they shouldn't because their parents tell them and they themselves know, but because there's money in it or whatever. Thirdly, the corruption of the authorities themselves, who now begin to take money when they shouldn't take money to allow certain things to happen. And I suppose it also brings in, inevitably, people who already have a way of thinking about places like that when they go there. Thinking about both places like that and the people who live in places like that. So this is the kind of the new imperialism, if you like. And because they can afford it, they have their plastic, they can buy anything they like, they can do whatever they like, and so on. But it's not a totally one-way traffic.
No, obviously not.
What it needs, though, which is what you have in most places that are strong enough to do so, is you have to have a state, or at least an administration, that can control this so that it's not abusive to the people. So the people are not, for example, now no longer allowed to use a beach because it's reserved for them. So people don't become beholden to this industry and afraid of upsetting this one. But most of all, for the people who should know better, do not become corrupted by the money that comes in from outside.
And what about the work of volunteers? I'm thinking now of people like Geraldine Bruno.
Yeah, well, again, I wasn't trying to say that NGOs and volunteers are, destroyers. They're not. A lot of the projects are worthwhile, good medical projects, educational projects, and so on.
Of course.
Again, it's what people bring. And certainly the volunteer like Geraldine Bruno is somebody there, she's going to have fun. She's there, she's taking 6 weeks of work. She will feel good as a result of volunteering. She'll be looked after. She might have an adventure or two, a romance or two, and then go home and resume her life. So the point is not to say, well, of course, what else do you expect of somebody like her? But what do they leave behind? That's what I was interested in. What do they leave behind? Which is not her fault. Like you can't blame a disease for being a disease. But it's what those who are there come to understand about what they do with this. And so this is the question, I guess, when I say I started with the idea of these people and these 3 young people, they've been dealt with like we all are dealt with. This is your life. Come on, get on with it. See how you live with it. And so one of these is persuaded by the glitter, if you like, of this.
But I think that one of the characteristics of your work that I like very much is your creation of strong female characters. And I don't think if much has been actually written about it. Now I'm thinking about the scholarly world. But people like Rehana and Jamila, Afia in Afterlives, they are great characters, they are strong, they are women that dare to desire. Are you aware of creating these female characters? Because I think that scholars have written a lot about your male characters, who happen to be mainly the protagonists of your novels. But there is this side in your work that I think it is remarkable, using the word remarkable from the quote. I don't know how you feel about it.
Well, I'm very happy that you think that. But what I don't know what scholars say, because generally speaking, I don't read what scholars say.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I just hope what they're saying is okay. That's why I was saying I trust you.
Don't. No, the problem with the scholars is that we write our articles, and sometimes I feel that we read each other's articles, and that's about it. The people really do not read us outside ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, of course. But, it's not that I don't read scholarly articles, but I don't read about me,
your work.
No.
About your work.
Because
you've never been tempted to read any article on some of your novels?
No.
Really?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, it's okay when a new book is out, say when Theft was published in March, and the publicist, say Bloomsbury, it was published simultaneously in both in London and in New York, which had never happened before. And they send these, hey, look, Washington Post. And I just look at the headlines. Is it okay? Good, thank you. Yeah, it's fine. I don't read.
Talking about reading.
And that's only when the new book, I certainly don't read scholarly stuff.
Well, you are also a scholar.
I know, but not about me.
Okay, right. Now, talking about reading, and especially rereading, I know that I have reread all your novels, and some of them maybe more than twice. And I have to tell you that, and this is flattering, but it's honest flattering, that you passed what I call the rereading test. When you reread a text and you find new insights, you see that this new reading is offering new insights, I don't know, from paying attention to things that you did not pay attention before, to reassessment of certain characters, etc., etc. And I guess my question is, do you reread?
I love rereading.
Okay.
It's a great pleasure. I reread a lot. In fact, if anything, I sort of have the books there, and I think, yeah, it's going to be that one next, but I can't. I have to read this because somebody's just sent me this new book, so that will have to wait.
Yeah.
But yeah, I reread a lot. It's not always so easy as it used to be, because, I don't know, somehow there seem to be more books in the world than there used to be. But I do remember, like when younger years, I think I'm thinking of a novel like Quiet Flows the Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many times I read that book. But there are others as well, some Dickens novels, which I've read much more than once. But yeah, I love reading. And you always find something new. There are different impulses in rereading.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm rereading a book because I think I tried reading that book 25 years ago, and I got to page 22. Let me give it another try after all this time. And I get to page 23, and I think, yep, I remember why I stopped. So there's that kind of rereading where you kind of dutifully go back to this thing that you kind of somehow failed at. Sometimes also the rereading is to do with, I really enjoyed that book, and I wonder if I will enjoy it again. And it doesn't always happen, but often it does. But the best thing of all is when indeed that book that I stopped at page 23 before turns out to be actually quite magnificent. Mm-hmm. And then it's a pleasure. And you can think, where's the other one of his? Was there another one? I think I had another copy of. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so rereading is fantastic. It's a real pleasure.
And there are a lot of there's a lot of reading. I mean, reading is a very important part of your fiction. A lot of your characters are incurable readers. They are keen readers.
I make them read.
Yeah, and there are a lot of literary references, which I have to say, it is the delight of us scholars. We are very happy. I mean, you have made us very happy with all these. It's like detective will say, yes, this and that, fantastic. But I don't know if you ever think that all these literary references might put off some readers or might think that this is too highbrow. Do you
It's all right. They don't have to read it. They can go read something else.
Do you have any audience, any particular audience in mind when you write, or just?
No, I don't have a particular audience in mind. I quite truthfully think that anybody can read my books, and if they don't want to, that's fine. Mm-hmm. I always think like this, I write not because I'm obliged to write. Mm-hmm. I write because I want to write.
Because you want to write, of course.
And the same goes for my reader.
Mm-hmm.
You want to read, read. You don't want to read, go read something else.
Well, except our students that wants to read. But that's another story.
Those are conscripts. That's a different thing altogether. Mm-hmm. And all of us, if we're interested in becoming scholars, obviously have to go through certain pains. And it might be. But, reading should not be that. Reading should be pleasure. Yeah,
I know.
And if it's not your kind of thing, then you read something else that is your kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, talking about students and reading, and this is one of the challenges that teachers of literatures must face nowadays, is to get our students to actually read. I have to say, though, that they seem to be, in general, keen to read what we call works from post-colonial literature, so that this subject, post-colonial literature, is quite popular, actually. And of course, your work falls into this category of post-colonial literature. How do you feel about this target of post-colonial literature? Because I know that there are people that feel very uncomfortable or disagree with it, or...
No, I don't disagree with it. I think I quite understand both how it came about and its function, particularly in teaching.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this term means quite so much to the general reader, but it may well do. I don't know. But I know that it came about as a result of trying to find a way of putting together a program of texts that can be taught because they have certain things in common. Mm-hmm. And that thing in common is the experience of European colonialism. Mm-hmm. It's not the end-all of everything or anything like that. But it works as a way of thinking about a program of texts. If you're just interested... I mean, the fact of it's to a certain extent, it's the great success of this concept, the post-colonial, as an academic idea, as a teaching idea, which then has kind of leaked out into public speak, as it were, and as a result, a certain misunderstanding of what it means. That as if somehow it's referring to the end of colonialism or something like that, rather than that it's an inquiry into the condition and the consequences of colonialism. And in that respect, it's just a generally anodyne term. It doesn't have to mean something radically against this or radically against that. Of course, if you're talking about colonialism, how can you talk about colonialism as if it's a holiday? It has to be critical. It has to be an engagement with what are its consequences. But that doesn't mean that what you're saying is that therefore you are all guilty of having been party to this. But it's the defensiveness as a result of these expressions that then makes it seem as if it's an utterly political position, which is, of course, a political position to a certain extent. But it's not an utterly political position. It's a way of saying, let's put these books together and let's see if they have things in common. Speaking as a teacher, but speaking as a reader, I don't care whether the post-colonialism is from Argentina or whether it's from North Alaska or whatever. All of these, everywhere in the world, we can find forms of expression or making narrative that speak about inequalities that were produced by powers that should not really have been able to subject others. Whether you call it colonialism, whether you call it the kind of events that took place in North America, the more or less extermination of whole peoples. Writing about all of those things, these are the subjects that are what post-colonialism is about.
Well, as a matter of fact, I taught your novels in a subject called Contemporary British Literature. Then in post-colonial literature, of course, a course on African literature. And now I'm teaching Gravel Heart in a subject which is about gender studies. What I mean is that post-colonial literature can actually, I think that in a way it demonstrates that this classification of literatures into national languages cannot be sustained any longer, in a way. You know, you can say
possibly because of the loosening, if you like, of the kind of the way academic structures work.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
That
is very limiting sometimes. But at the same time, it allows you, I mean, post-colonial literature allows you this, to teach what I call post-colonial
text. I don't have a problem.
In any kind of subjects.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with
great.
this word. Somebody come up with a better word, I've joined.
Yeah.
It's no problem. It's just a useful term for us as a way of putting text together, a way of asking certain questions. Come up with something else. We've had several attempts, new literatures or Commonwealth literature, blah, blah, blah. They're just provisional things.
Yeah, well, there is a lot of talk now, especially in the Spanish environment, about decolonial literatures.
Okay, fine, let's go.
No, to be honest, I remember that when I first, heard about it, that decolonial, I said, not again, because we really do not need a new concept, a new fancy concept or whatever. But there you are.
Careers are made out of these things.
That's true. That's true, yeah. But anyway, one of the things that now I'm talking about, I guess, a reader. When I studied English at the Autonomous University of Barcelona, there was no subject which was, post-colonial literature at all. So my way to get to post-colonialism was through US literature, and to be more precise, Afro-America. That was my way to eventually Africa, and then later on, of course, Felicity was there. She just started her academic career, and thanks God, then we had post-colonialism. But what I mean is that in Spain, this is something relatively new. Still nowadays, we are struggling to make them, visible. So, and as I said, as a student, as a reader, for me, it was very important because these texts help me to see, first of all, to see things that I didn't see, just the actual, of seeing, and then also to go see things also differently from another perspective. And you reach a point in which there is no turning point after this, And of course, we can think about literature, texts, also critics. To me, a great influence was Edward Said, I have to say. That for me there was a before and after Orientalism, culture and imperialism. So thanks God that there are people like you, writers that can transmit all this in the way that you do it. And I know other writers also do it. Now, talking today in the interview, I had an interview before coming here. I was asked to describe your work, your prose. And I said, well, I don't know, I would say that it's not Baroque at all, that it's very elegant. I think it is very much to the point. And that basically you are a great narrator, that you are in command of the narration, which I think it is very difficult, because there are writers that may give you great moments, but maybe the narration falters. I don't know if you are aware of it. Are you aware of the fact that you are such a great narrator?
Of course I am. No. You just do your thing. You just do what has to be done to be as clear as possible. I don't think I'm a great narrator. I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a that. I don't think like that. Everything is every page, every line, every paragraph has to be written, and so until it's satisfying or it's right. I think that works. Yeah, okay, fine. I don't think yeah, that's good. No, I think that's fine. That works. Move on. Get on with it.
Mm-hmm. Can I share one of my favorite fragments from By the Sea?
Of course.
With you?
I mean, you can. If you ask me, I don't have any answers. If you want to say nice things, I'll sit here all evening.
Okay. So I'm going to say a nice thing about this. No, it's one of my favorite fragments. Is Saleh Omar has a picture of 3 Jewish men that are forced to kneel down and scrub the pavement in Vienna. And he looks at this picture and he feels the connection with them. He is a victim, or has been a victim of the Zanzibari revolution. These people are victims of the Holocaust. And I wrote down actually these lines because I think they are so beautiful. You say, the ears were written in the language of the body, and it is not a language I can speak with words. Now, I use this scene in my teaching because I want students to see how 2 events that are geographically and historically distant can connect people, right? And I don't know, thinking about, I couldn't help but remembering when I was preparing this, when I'm thinking about possible questions to ask you, I couldn't help thinking about this fragment, thinking about what is happening nowadays. And I don't know, I know that for me it's hard to comprehend, and I know for some people here who are colleagues of mine also, because we have talked about it, the fact that the offspring of people that have been persecuted now turn into persecutors themselves. I don't know if this tells us something about the human condition, something bad about the human condition.
I don't know what it tells us. It puzzles me too. Yeah. So I don't have an answer that I can say to you, this is what it is. But it does seem that there are many moments in history where we see these incomprehensible actions and reactions. I very clearly know the passage. I wouldn't have been able to quote it, but I remember it very well because I remember seeing that photograph. And for many years, I used to have it in my office, just up there. And sometimes I would speak to students about it because I don't know if you, I'm sure you do, but it's just a way of asking, really. But there's the moment in Waiting for the Barbarians. when one of the barbarians is brought back. And there's a description. This is a novel by J.M. Coetzee, if you don't know it. And there's a description of certain kind of system of wires that somehow gone through the cheek, gone through a knee, but basically every movement that this prisoner makes is going to be excruciating. And there's a crowd of people, presumably, I suppose, although he doesn't use color or complexion or anything like that in that novel, but presumably the town people, the white people, who are standing around watching, and they laugh at the antics, as it were, of this person. So that reminds me, I used to put it, rather when we discussed that book, I would show them the picture there as well. Right. And there are many other examples like that we can find where people somehow seem capable of watching excruciating tortures like that, and either laughing or somehow disassociating themselves from them. So I guess there must be a way in which even those who have suffered enormous pain, you might say those who've been enslaved, are also capable of acts of great cruelty. In North America, say. I don't know the answer. Yeah. I think, though, it's something that we see repeated. Maybe we're just nasty.
Yeah. Well, there is some nastiness about the human condition, but there is also a lot of goodness, because I think that there is a lot of evil depicted in your novels, but also goodness, and they are good people. Sure. And your characters...
Sure, there is a lot of goodness. We know that. We know that people are kind to each other all the time and so on. But somehow it does seem that there is a certain something that allows us to shut that down when we are asked to act as if we're beasts.
I think we have to end it here because they are making signs there. Yeah.
Signals are coming across.
So now it's the time for the people in the audience to ask you questions, if that's fine. Would you like some water?
Hello, Mr. Gurnah. How are you?
I'm recovering a little bit, but I'm all right now.
Okay, good. I brought a question about colonialism and something like that, but you just answered me that. And I wonder if you have a favorite writer. And another question is, what makes you to be a writer? When was that time when you said, I need to write a book, I need to write something?
That's it?
Yep.
That's it?
Yep.
Well, actually, the first question is, I know it may not, I don't have a favorite writer. I have several favorite writers. And it is a question I know people like to ask, they often ask this, but it's not a simple question. If you spend your more or less all your adult life reading and teaching and reading and teaching and reading and writing, so it's not possible that there's going to be a favorite writer. There might be one that might last a year or two, and then you think, well, maybe I'm not sure, and then you move on, and then that's why we're talking about rereading, right? So then you go back and say, was I right? Was I wrong? I have many favorite writers, honestly. So I'm not going to answer that question. It's all right. All right. So the next one was what makes me want to write, something like that. Again, it's not so simple, because I think once you start, for whatever reason, and I don't know how many of you are doing that, but once you start, then you want to do it better, as it were. It's not simply that you want to improve, but there's always something left behind. You think, well, you know, I didn't deal with this or that or that. I would like to try and do that or whatever. In the early stages of a writing life, at least the kind of writing somebody like that I do, it very much is what is bothering you the most, the things that are most troublesome, that you need to disentangle, to work out, and so on. And I think actually it's a mistake, well, not a mistake, it's inevitable, many writers make, because you use your best material, as it were, very, very quickly in your first or second novel, and you've used all the wonderful things that you could spend a lifetime writing, because you just need to say them, you need to get it all out. And you probably don't get it all out as beautifully as you might have done later on when you knew how to write better. But later on, then as you go on, then you think there's something there that I didn't do enough. So that's what I'm going to do next. It might be the third or fourth or fifth book before you return to it. You refer to returning to the story of Abbas in The Last Gift.
Yeah.
It's not desperation that made me do that, but it's more like it's been nagging me for, while I'm writing other things, and I think, but what happened to him?
That's what we ask ourselves. What happened to him? What
So
happened
I'll
to
write
characters?
about what happened to him.
What happened to Ilyas Hassan, for instance, in Germany, while he was living there?
You have to wait. I already have somebody badgering me on that, but you have to wait. But that's what it is. There's something left behind, and you think, well, do I want to go back to that? Yeah, why not? Let me think. That's how it goes. Thank you.
I will ask you, which is your, can you describe your style of writing? Is this a clear writing? And for you, is this more important, the subject or the language? Thank you very much.
It's not quite as self-conscious as that. You know, it's not... They come kind of together, if you like. You know, it's not really as one is separate from the other. The subject obviously is important. Otherwise, without the subject, the language is just flowers and embellishment and so on. But it's what it is that concerns me that is interesting or important. And then how to find a way of saying it is probably the most difficult thing, although it's not painful, it's just difficult. It takes time to think that out, to think that through. Do I want it to be kindly? Do I want it to be maybe a cynical voice? Do I want to have a distant perspective? Do I want a first person? All of these sorts of decisions then become important about what kind of language is appropriate. So it's not, they don't like separate themselves. They're all working along with each other. And then if you're lucky, you find something that is at least satisfying to me. And then you can continue. Is that okay? You must be boiling up there.
Yeah. There's a question up there.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for being here, first of all.
Hi.
And I had a question about the impact of the prize you won. Has it had a negative impact on your creativity, like the pressure you were under, or have you remained mostly unbothered by the whole chaos surrounding the reward? Thank you.
Well, yes, of course it's had an impact. largely because it has taken quite a lot of time, which is both inevitable and also quite pleasurable, a lot of it. Meeting readers, the new translations, and so on. All of that, that's all part of the beauty of the thing, the wonderful dimension of something like that. But it does mean that time is shorter. But then I retired from teaching in 2017, thinking, now I'm going to have concentrate in a peaceful way, not in some kind of intense way, but in a peaceful way. Concentrate on writing, growing vegetables, going on holidays, reading, that kind of thing. And that was okay for a couple of years or so, but it didn't last. So I guess it's a wonderful thing. Let me say that first of all. I have no problem at all with what the Swedish Academy did. But it does mean that that time is a little bit under pressure at times. But on the other hand, it's not impossible to request both of publishers and agents and organizers. I don't want to do anything for 6 months. I want to write. And that has been possible to do, which is how this book got completed. And I hope maybe the next book also. So everybody's good, you know, but nonetheless there is, it seems to me, an inevitable kind of responsibility and obligation to respond to the interests of readers and publishers and so on, and to come and meet you all.
Ja està? Una més? A dalt hi havia una. Sí.
Somebody up there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Gravel. Mm-hmm.
I was surprised. I'm from like southeast of Turkey, Kurdistan was similar to my childhood, and I was like very surprised about how he put so beautifully the things that I would be ashamed of. So it's like very inspiring, like all this degree school, but there's nothing in school. You were beaten or Quran class. Like I think really very inspiring. How it can be told like so beautifully. And also there was this sentence in this same book saying there were times where they were cruel to be kind. And I was like, wow. So it's like I want to thank you like for being an inspiration for us. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to discover you.
I'm happy you discovered me as well. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry, that spotlight is right in my face. That's why I'm doing this. Okay, we're done? Thank you very much.
I was thinking